Hey, I am CK and I hope you will be fine and enjoying your sleep. So, I know that you came here because you want to listen something, and yes, I am going to tell you a story. So here we go. This isn't a love story. At least, not the kind you hope for. It's not about happy endings or perfect moments frozen in time. It's about what happens when someone walks into your life like sunlight and leaves you in the dark. It's about the way a single person can change everything. The way they can lift you up so high, only to let you fall so far you forget how to breathe. She destroyed my life. Not with fire, not with rage, but with silence, with distance, with indifference. And this is the story of how it happened. Whispered slowly, piece by piece. The beginning, the breaking, and the fragile, quiet healing that came after. Part 1. The beginning. I don't really know why I'm telling you this. Maybe because I can't sleep tonight. Maybe because the silence feels heavier than usual, and my own thoughts are too loud. Maybe because some stories don't let you go until you whisper them out. This is the story of how she destroyed my life. But before the ruin, before the silence, before the emptiness, there was magic. And I think that's the part that hurts the most. I met her on an ordinary day. The kind of day you don't expect to remember. Grey sky, soft drizzle, streets half empty. But there she was. And suddenly, the whole world tilted. She wasn't doing anything special. She wasn't even looking at me at first. She was standing at a bus stop, holding a paperback book in her hands. Her hair was a little messy from the wind, and she kept brushing strands out of her face as she read. I remember the way her lips moved ever so slightly, mouthing the words like they belonged to her. And when she smiled, just a small, private smile at some hidden sentence, I swear, it was like someone lit a candle inside me. It wasn't love at first sight. No, it was quieter than that. It was the sound of recognition. The strange, inexplicable feeling that this stranger was already part of my story. We spoke for the first time inside that same bus. She sat across from me, tucking her knees slightly toward the window. Her book rested on her lap, her fingers playing absent-mindedly with the corner of the page. I remember staring too long, caught in the rhythm of her presence. And then, like she could sense me, she looked up, met my eyes, and said, "You know, most people don't even notice this book exists. But it's beautiful." Her voice, soft, warm, unhurried, like she was used to speaking only when words mattered. I didn't even care what the book was. I just wanted to keep her talking. So I said the first thing that came to mind, something clumsy, awkward. Then, "I guess I'm not like most people." She laughed. Not a polite laugh, not forced. It was one of those laughs that spill out before someone can stop it. And that sound, God, that sound. I didn't know it then, but it would become my favorite music. And later, the ghost I couldn't escape. We began seeing each other often after that. At first by accident, same bus, same route, same grey mornings. And then, slowly, by choice. She liked tea, chamomile, especially. She said coffee made her restless, made her thoughts race too fast. But tea slowed the world down. So we would sit in quiet cafes, steam rising between us. And she would tell me things about her life in that same unhurried tone. She had a way of making ordinary things sound extraordinary. A walk in the park became an adventure. A crack in the sidewalk became a story. She once told me the sky wasn't blue. Not really. It was just a reflection of the ocean, stretched thin and high above our heads. I knew it wasn't true, but the way she whispered it, leaning close like a conspirator, made me want to believe. I think about those nights the most, the early ones, before everything fell apart. We'd walk under dim street lamps, her hand brushing against mine but never quite holding it, like a secret waiting to be revealed. Sometimes she'd hum under her breath, little tunes I didn't recognize. When I asked her, she'd smile and say, "Just something my grandmother used to sing." She smelled faintly of vanilla and old books, and she had this habit of tucking her hair behind her ear when she was nervous. I began memorizing these small details, the way people collect seashells. Every fragment felt precious. It didn't take long for her to become the center of my world. It wasn't dramatic, not like in movies. It was gradual, like water seeping into soil. I'd wake up and she'd be my first thought. I'd fall asleep to the echo of her voice. Days without her felt incomplete, like unfinished sentences. One evening, as rain tapped against my window, she whispered, "Do you ever feel like we met too soon? Or maybe too late?" I asked her what she meant. She only smiled, looking out into the night, and said, "Nothing. Forget it." But I couldn't forget it. I never forgot anything she said. Every word felt carved into me, like her voice was ink and I was the page. Looking back now, I realize how dangerous it was to give someone that much power. To let their presence define my joy. To let their absence define my pain. But in that moment, I didn't care. Because when she smiled at me, I felt whole. And when she whispered my name, I believed I mattered. She didn't just walk into my life. She rewrote it, line by line, breath by breath, until I couldn't tell where she ended and I began. The shadows started small. A late reply to a message. A promise she forgot to keep. Moments where her eyes seemed far away, like she was already somewhere else. At first, I ignored it. I told myself love was patience. I told myself it was just stress, or bad timing, or my own insecurities talking. But deep inside, I felt it. Something was changing. One night, we were sitting on a bench near the river. The city lights shimmered across the water, and she was quieter than usual. When I asked what was wrong, she shook her head and said, "Nothing. I'm just tired." But her hand had already slipped away from mine. And her gaze was somewhere I couldn't follow. That was the first night I walked home with an ache in my chest I couldn't name. The ache didn't leave. It grew, quietly, like a vine wrapping itself around my ribs. Her messages became shorter. Her voice on the phone sounded distracted, as if she were half listening, half somewhere else. She began canceling plans, at first with excuses that almost made sense: work, family, exhaustion. But later, it was just silence. I told myself it was temporary, that people go through phases, that relationships bend and stretch. But deep down, I knew something was slipping away, and the more I tried to hold on, the more it cut into my hands. I started waiting for her texts, waiting for her calls, waiting for her laughter to return. And in that waiting, I forgot myself. Nights blurred together. I'd stare at my phone, willing it to light up with her name. Every vibration in my pocket made my heart jump, only to crash when it was never her. I stopped sleeping properly. I stopped eating properly. It was as if my life had shrunk down to a single point: the question of whether she still loved me. And the worst part? I was too afraid to ask. It happened on a Tuesday. Funny how the worst days of your life never announce themselves. They arrive quiet, disguised as ordinary. We had planned to meet at the cafe where we first sat together. I waited by the window, the one with the chipped wooden frame. My tea went cold before she arrived, and when she finally walked in, something in me already knew. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Her hug was brief, almost polite. She sat across from me like a stranger trying to be kind. I asked her how she'd been. She said, "Busy." I asked her if she was okay. She said, "Fine." The silence between us was louder than the clutter of cups around us. And then, she looked at me. Not with love. Not with anger. But with distance. Like I was a chapter she had already finished reading. I don't remember the exact words she used. Something about not feeling the same anymore. Something about needing space, needing freedom. But I remember the way my chest collapsed as she spoke. Like every breath I had ever taken was leaving me all at once. I wanted to beg. I wanted to promise I'd change, promise I'd be better, promise I'd wait. But the way she looked at me told me it was already over. There was nothing left to fight for. When she stood up, I did too. But she didn't reach for me. She just whispered, "I'm sorry," and walked out into the rain. And I stayed there, staring at the door, waiting for her to come back. She never did. That night, my room felt like a coffin. Too small, too quiet, too heavy. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every word she had said, every smile she had given me, every moment I thought meant forever. The silence was unbearable. It wasn't just the absence of sound. It was the absence of her. Her laugh, her voice, the little hum she made when she was lost in thought. All of it, gone. I tried to distract myself. Music, movies, scrolling endlessly on my phone. But everything led back to her. Every song reminded me of her laugh. Every movie line echoed something she had once whispered. Even my phone betrayed me. Her pictures, her messages, her name staring back at me from old notifications. Days blurred together. I went through the motions of life, but nothing felt real. Food tasted like paper. The sun felt harsh instead of warm. And sleep became my enemy. Because every time I closed my eyes, she was there, smiling, laughing, holding my hand. And every time I woke up, I lost her all over again. I kept wondering, was it something I said? Something I did? Was I not enough? Or was I too much? Questions swarmed my head until they became a constant whisper, eating at me in the quiet hours of the night. She had walked away, but the ghost of her stayed. And in some ways, that hurt even more. I started avoiding mirrors, because every time I looked into one, I saw someone I didn't recognize. Hollow eyes, a tired face, a body that moved, but without life inside it. Friends asked if I was okay. I lied. I said I was fine. But the truth was, I wasn't living anymore. I was just existing in the shadow she left behind. Nights became the hardest. The bed felt too big without her. The silence too loud. I would press my face into the pillow, pretend her scent was still there, pretend her warmth hadn't faded. Sometimes, I thought I heard her voice in the dark. A whisper, a laugh, the echo of her saying my name. But when I turned my head, there was nothing, just emptiness. That was the breaking point. Not the cafe, not her words, not even her walking away. The real breaking point was the moment I realized she was still everywhere inside me, but I was nowhere inside her. Life after her was not life at all. It was survival. Every street, every corner, every sound carried her shadow. I couldn't walk past the bus stop without remembering her hair tangled in the wind. I couldn't sit in the cafe without hearing her laugh echo against the walls. Even the river was ruined. The lights on the water only reminded me of the night her hand slipped from mine. She was gone, but she was everywhere. In the smell of chamomile tea, in the faint vanilla perfume that lingered on strangers who passed by, in the books stacked on my shelf, books I couldn't open because her fingerprints were still pressed between the pages. It was like she had become a ghost, not the kind that haunts houses, the kind that haunts people, me. And the cruelest part? I still loved her, even after the silence, even after the distance, even after she destroyed everything I was. Some part of me still wanted her to come back. At night, I would close my eyes and bargain with the darkness. Just let me hear her voice one more time. Just let her walk through the door again. But the darkness never answered. It only reminded me of the truth, that she wasn't mine anymore. And maybe she never really was. Tried to fill the emptiness. Music, work, long walks at night. But everything circled back to her. A song on the radio. And suddenly I was back in her car, windows down. Her voice singing off-key beside me. A crowded bookstore. And I could almost feel her hand tugging me toward some hidden corner. Whispering, "Look, this one's ours." Even laughter on the street cut through me, because it was never hers. I began seeing her in strangers. A tilt of the head, a flash of hair, the way someone held a book. For a split second, I'd believe it was her. My chest would tighten, hope would rise, only to shatter when I blinked and realized, no, it wasn't her. It would never be her. People told me time would heal, that every day without her would hurt a little less. But time didn't heal. Time hollowed me out. Time turned her into an echo. Faint, distant, but constant. She didn't just leave me. She stayed. In my head. In my chest. in every empty space she once filled. She wasn't my lover anymore. She was my haunting. There were moments when I almost hated her, when the weight of missing her turned bitter. I would whisper into the darkness, "How could you do this to me? How could you make me need you?" and then vanish. But even in anger, she owned me, because hate is still a form of love, twisted and raw, and I couldn't escape her hold, no matter how much I wanted to. I stopped talking about her to anyone. Friends grew tired of the repetition, the way her name slipped into every sentence. So I kept her locked inside me, a secret wound I pressed on in private, just to remind myself it was still there, and it always was. The world moved on without me. Seasons changed. People laughed. Life flowed forward. But I was stuck, trapped in a moment that no longer existed, a moment she had already abandoned. It felt like living in ruins, the walls of my life still standing, but hollow, empty, echoing with the ghost of her footsteps. For a long time, I thought I would never escape her, that my life would always be a monument to what she left behind. But slowly, so slowly I barely noticed, something began to change. It wasn't sudden. It wasn't dramatic. It was a quiet shift, like dawn creeping into a dark room. One morning, I made tea for myself, chamomile, and for the first time, I didn't think of her. I just held the cup, felt the warmth seep into my hands, and breathed. I began writing. Not about her at first, just words, fragments of thoughts, little pieces of myself I had forgotten. And somehow, through those words, I started hearing my own voice again, a voice that had been drowned out by hers for too long. I went for walks, not to chase memories of her, but to feel the air, to listen to the rustle of leaves, to remind myself the world still existed outside my grief. It wasn't easy. There were nights I still woke up expecting her beside me, days when the smell of vanilla perfume could shatter me in seconds. But healing isn't about erasing the ghost. It's about learning to live even while it lingers. And little by little, I was learning. I stopped waiting for her name to appear on my phone, stopped measuring my worth by the sound of her laughter. Instead, I began listening to the quiet inside me, the kind of quiet that wasn't empty, but peaceful. There were small victories, cooking a meal and actually tasting it, laughing at a joke without guilt, falling asleep without clutching the pillow like it was her. Tiny moments, almost invisible, but together, they stitched me back into something whole. I realized something one night, staring out at the city lights. She hadn't just destroyed my life. She destroyed the version of me that couldn't exist without her. And maybe that was necessary, because beneath the ruins, I was still here, bruised, shaken, but alive. Sometimes I still miss her. Sometimes I still dream of her laugh, her touch, her voice. But when I wake up now, I don't collapse. I breathe. I rise. I move forward. Maybe she destroyed my life, but in doing so, she gave me the chance to build a new one. The ghost of her still lingers, but it doesn't terrify me anymore. It visits like an old song, one I don't play often. But when I hear it, I can stand still and listen without breaking. I no longer chase her memory. I no longer beg the night to bring her back. Instead, I let her be what she is, a chapter, a story I once lived, but no longer belong to. Some nights, I whisper to myself the words I once wished she would say. You're enough. You're still here. You survived. And maybe that's what healing really is. Not forgetting, not erasing, but reclaiming the pieces of yourself that someone else once carried away. She destroyed my life. Yes, but the truth is, that life was fragile. It was built on her smile, her voice, her presence. Now, I am building something different, something stronger, something mine. And when I look in the mirror, I finally see someone I recognize, someone who lived through the ruin, and is still standing. I don't hate her anymore. For a long time, I thought I would. I thought the only way to survive was to fill the hole she left with anger. But hate keeps you chained to the very thing you want to escape. And I'm tired of chains. So instead, I let her go. Not in one sudden moment, but in pieces. Every day, a little more. Every night, another thread cut loose. Now when I pass the bus stop where I first saw her, I don't collapse inside. I just smile faintly, remembering a stranger with messy hair and a paperback book. And then I keep walking. When I sip chamomile tea, I don't taste her anymore. I just taste tea. Warm. Comforting. Mine. The past is still there. It always will be. But it no longer owns me. I carry it softly, like a faded photograph. A reminder, not a prison. And maybe that's the quiet gift hidden inside destruction. The chance to begin again. To breathe again. To live again. Because yes, she destroyed my life. But from the wreckage, I've started to build something new. I don't know what tomorrow will look like. Maybe the ache will return. Maybe I'll stumble, fall back into the shadows of her memory. But maybe tomorrow will hold something lighter. A new laugh. A new voice. A new beginning. For the first time in a long time. That thought doesn't scare me. It feels possible. It feels real. If you've ever loved someone who left you, you know the way their absence feels like a second skin. You know how the silence screams. But you also know, deep down, that silence can become music again. Different. Softer. But still music. So this is where I leave the story. Not with a perfect ending. Not with a neat ribbon tied around the pain. But with a breath. A step forward. A promise to myself that the ruins don't define me. She destroyed my life. But she didn't destroy me. And now, I'm learning how to live again.